Shalom. Welcome to Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman. We have a number of issues to talk about on our show today, but to begin with, the world in 5 minutes. This week, Syria remains one of the top issues that people around the world are thinking about. I spent this past weekend at the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee Policy Conference in Washington, D.C., along with 13,000 of my closest friends, Israel advocates from around the world. And the primary issue that came up, the primary issues at the policy conference were really three. The events in Syria and concern about deterioration of the security situation in Syria and potentially spillover into Israel, into surrounding countries. What happens if the government of Syria collapses? What happens to the weapons in Syria? Syria having one of the largest stockpiles of chemical and biological weapons. And with militants in Syria, many of them being allied with Al-Qaeda and others allied with the Muslim Brotherhood. The situation is very difficult. Just announced today, the Arab League has decided to grant weapons to the Free Syrian Army as a way to try to prop up the Free Syrian Army in its battles against the Syrian government, which is backed by Iran and includes fighters from Hezbollah. So things in Syria are about to get worse, my friends. They're not going to get better. We will see more deaths, more violence, and more spillover. In addition, at AIPAC, there was a lot of discussion, about what's going on with the Iranian nuclear weapons program, or really what's not going on. No progress in negotiations. Iran continuing to enrich uranium. The diplomatic situation, everyone says we have to continue to work to the fullest extent of the diplomatic situation possible. No one is calling for an imminent military strike against Iran. The desire is for the enforcement of sanctions and for the regime to change its path. And because the consequences of any military action against Iran are fairly significant. Israel may be able to do some surgical strikes. The United States may be able to do some surgical strikes. But in the long run, the only thing that's going to dissuade Iran from its pursuit to acquire a nuclear weapon is going to be agreement by the regime to do that. The other situation that comes up is, in fact, the peace process, and there is a great desire to see some progress toward a peace agreement with the Palestinian people. Now, obviously, there are lots of impediments to that, and we've talked about some of them on this show already. We'll talk about more of them on this show going forward in the future. But there is desire to see some movement there to come to a resolution between the Israelis and the Palestinians that allows them to move forward in peace and security in two states living side by side. The big issue in Washington right now is clearly the sequestration. The sequestration has impacts on things like White House tours, which are being canceled for the next week, the next few weeks indefinitely. It also has an impact on things like health programs, education programs, programs for the poor. Obviously, major issues that we should all be caring about. It also has an impact on the foreign aid bill and on the American support of Israeli defense, including the Iron Dome system. The Iron Dome system support, which was additional to the budget last year, is not even part of the sequestration, really. It's completely separate from that. And so the impact financially on Israel of the sequestration is even more significant. At least the aid is even more significant. And when you put that in context of the threats from Syria, the threats from Iran, and potentially a major, broader regional war that could see rockets coming from all over, Israel is very concerned about that support. It was notable at the AIPAC Policy Conference that congressmen and senators alike were very strong in their support of that system, the Iron Dome system, and the other systems being developed, Arrow and David's Sling systems to handle medium and longer range rockets. And so there is a belief that regardless of what happens, eventually those military systems will be funded and will be well functioning in future conflicts as defensive measures against attacks. It's of note that even those who lean toward the peace camp should understand that the Iron Dome system is a defensive system. It's not an offensive system. And those systems will be put in place, not just in Israel eventually, they will be put in place at strategic locations to protect civilians from rocket fire around the world in the decade to come. There is also a tremendous rise of what I would qualify as not only anti-Israel sentiments, but anti-Semitism. And we're seeing this on college campuses around the country. We're seeing it among young people around the world. I have two different stories to share with you today, later on in the show. One of Dutch teenagers who were expressing just outright anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews on television there on the Dutch television, and also an interview that I conducted with Paulo Cremidis, who was part of the Brooklyn College opposition to the boycott, divestment, and sanctions programs. A boycott, divestment, and sanctions program that occurred a couple of weeks ago. And he sheds some new light on what occurred in those programs. Today, we have conclave. The Catholic Church is now searching for its new pope. And the last cardinal that was that they were expecting to arrived today. And without any doubt, one of the biggest impacts on the Jewish community, certainly Jewish-Christian relations, going forward will be the election of the new pope. And we will be talking about that more than likely next week, but certainly the week after that, as that impacts the Jewish world. And that is the world in 5 minutes.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotta be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, We guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money-back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Shalom. Welcome back to Understanding the World. This is Rabbi Kaufman. I'm joined in the studio by Mark Finkelstein of the Jewish Community Relations Director for the Jewish Federation of Greater Des Moines. As I was sitting here doing our World in 5 Minutes at the beginning of the show, my chair kept lowering itself mysteriously, little bit by bit, as I was speaking, and I started to get a little giggle, which is not good when you're trying to be serious talking about world news. So I had to get my composure here for a moment. Mark, we're going to talk a little bit about the boycott, divestment, sanctions program at Brooklyn College, and I wanted to have you share a little bit of background about what was going on and what is known already before we get to our interview with the taped interview with Paulo Cremides that I was able to hold at the AIPAC Policy Conference.
That's fine. Brooklyn College is a public university within the City College system of New York City. It has a political science department. The political science department was approached by a student group asking the political science department to co-sponsor a conference they would hold on boycott, divestment, and sanctions of Israel, which is obviously a one-sided point of view. For some reason, the poli-sci department decided to sponsor that, even knowing that it was unlikely that opposing views and free dissemination of ideas would be conducted at the particular workshop. After a lot of public discussion, some based on incorrect, some based on correct inferences of what the conference was going to be about. It drew a lot of public attention, and the conference was held. Indeed, it was a one-sided discussion, and in the course of the conference, Jewish students were either not denied seats that they were promised in the conference or were ejected from the conference themselves for ostensibly holding material contrary to the point of view expressed by the students.
Yes, and we have with us, Ryan, is our video ready? In a minute? I was able to do a video, record an interview with Paulo Cremides, which will air in a little bit here. We're having some technical issues of trying to queue up the video.
Let's go backtrack then
okay.
A few more seconds. The issue on any campus is not if it's legitimate to hold debate or discussion about controversial topics. The issue is whether freedom of speech will be upheld for all parts of the student community wishing to attend, and this particularly wasn't the case. Do you have any thoughts about that, David?
Well, it's not only that. It's fairly clear that when you hear the interview with Paulo,
Yeah.
It's fairly clear the political science club's leader is part of the Students for Justice in Palestine, and was the one promoting the event.
Yeah. So, but it's not illegitimate for that student group itself to hold events on campus, or even possibly to ask for co-sponsorship in and of itself.
And it's fairly clear that you've got times when campuses want to present different points of view, and even to present controversial points of view is not a problem.
Right.
The idea here was that this seems to be a fairly strongly divided campus, where you've got people who are strong Zionists, religious Zionists, who didn't want to engage in this debate at all and were fairly hostile on the one hand, and on the other hand, you have what I would say is the pro-Palestinian Students for Justice in Palestine, and the way things seem to work there is that people come from all the city universities to the campus in question, and so instead of having a situation in which you have an equal proportion of students in the campus who are for and against, and you can have a reasonable debate. What happens is the proponents of boycott, divestment, and sanctions came from all over the city, and created an environment that was fairly hostile.
The second point is the possibility of a hidden agenda. The boycott, divestment, and sanction movement is ostensibly about preventing trade with certain aspects within the West Bank, for example. But number one, it also seems to extend to boycotting of academics in Israel. And number two, the fellow Barghouti, who is one of the chief speakers, is not only on record as promoting BDS, but of trying to disestablish the state of Israel as a Jewish state to begin with. So most people don't understand, essentially, that BDS is not a movement critical of Israeli policy. It tends to be seen, I believe, as a movement wishing to dismantle Israel.
It's about delegitimization. And
that's a different story than simply criticizing any particular policy of any particular government.
Yes, and so the delegitimization efforts that were going on tend to go on the political left, the progressive left. It tends to be essentially in the peace camp, the pro-Palestinian camp and the peace camp. Now, what you'll find out is it looks like that the issues going on at Brooklyn College were within the peace camp. That this was not really Zionists against the Palestinian side. This was the pro-Palestinian side against the people trying to work for a two-state solution and promote peace between Palestinians and Israelis. So the way it was being presented, and the way it's often been presented,
yes,
is the Zionists attacking the BDS advocates
right,
for trying to promote peace. That's exactly not what happened there. What happened there was this is the pro-Palestinian activists attacking the pro-two-state solution people,
right,
and not and trying to argue against the state of Israel, not trying to promote peace at all. The people who wanted to promote peace were against the BDS program, not for it, and that is a fairly significant issue of note.
And it needs to be clarified within the mainstream media, who are accused essentially of not grasping the issue in its complexity to begin with.
So, Ryan, are we ready for it yet, or are you still having trouble back there? You're still having trouble. Okay. So I'll tell you what. We'll come back to the BDS, the discussion of Brooklyn College in just a few minutes. We're having some technical difficulties in our studio here. And we'll talk about some other things that are going on. Yesterday, there was a discussion by Eric Holder about the use of military force against an American in his home country. Mark, you have any thoughts about this issue of the use of drones and the filibuster that occurred yesterday by Rand Paul?
Well, we understand that the filibuster itself ran for some 13 hours and was focused on the use of the drones. I think from one point of view, some people see it as hypocritical for the administration to have taken such a harsh position against waterboarding, pouring water on the face of terrorists, and still seemingly to support the use of drones in killing people by remote control. What do you think?
Well, it seems to me, it seems to me that the drone policy is a way to try to avoid ground-based casualties.
Yes.
I mean, if you think about the fact that the drones are designed to go into situations in which you have entrenched militants who are going to be able to inflict serious harm, who are either intending to inflict serious harm on civilians at the time, or are in such positions that they cannot be easily taken by human beings going after them.
And simply to save American lives, for example, and to pinpoint with accuracy the targets, the drones are used. I think certainly it's a valid point, and I find that very useful. And certainly it's not indiscriminately used. I think a lot of people who are looking at this topic assume that the drones can and will be used against anybody who's simply suspected of a problem, instead of, as you were describing, known terrorists on their way to do some bad things.
You have a situation in which let's say you've got a militant comes into this country. Let's say they're an American citizen, just because this is what the issue is. Just say you have an American citizen who crosses the border into Mexico, comes up with a handful. Let's say there's 3 or 4 militants, and they have RPGs that they have acquired in Mexico. They have machine guns that they're bringing forward, and they're intending to inflict harm on anybody coming after them. Now, are we going to honestly say that we want to send a helicopter after these people that they can shoot down with this thing, or that we're going to send police forces after them to try to arrest them when they could easily kill police forces? I mean, it would seem to me that a drone would make a lot more sense in that situation, where you know that there is an imminent threat, which was the imminent threat is the thing that was discussed yesterday. Okay. And so then we had this discussion of Rand Paul, and he brought up a reasonable point. Is somebody sitting in a cafe, just sitting in a cafe, an imminent threat? Where is the line between the obvious militant who's sitting there basically with an army who can shoot down a helicopter or kill dozens of police officers or even SWAT team coming after them, versus somebody sitting in a cafe with his family having a cup of coffee and cocoa?
These are civil rights issues, and I think if you talk to somebody from the ACL, perhaps you'll find they'll say that under no circumstances, except for somebody in the commission of a crime itself, should lethal force be used against any Americans.
Well, so then the question is, what is in the commission of a crime mean? I mean, we're still running there, because you could say somebody possessing an RPG, for example. They don't have to be in the act of firing the RPG.
Just the position of an RPG.
Somebody who's plotting to do harm. I mean, this is where I think we run into a lot of issues, and I think they're even more complex than people are trying to make them out to be.
Well, David, where do you fall on the spectrum between doing nothing and employing drones against people simply suspected of
I think the
activity.
problem. I think the problem is the sane answer is that you trust the decision makers to make the appropriate decision, and the problem is that's not a reasonable answer in our environment.
It's not a reasonable answer. That's right.
I mean, that's the reality here. Do we really trust the government to make the decisions as to whether or not somebody is really an imminent threat? And
Well, it depends, as you said, on the criterion used to determine what an imminent threat is.
I mean, I think is
Yes.
where the issue is, and I think this is also problematic in that I don't think that the government wants to be in a position where they have to define that, because you don't want to have somebody be able to go right up to it
Yes.
and know
That's
where
right,
the line
that's right.
is.
Well, that's the
and
creative.
then move forward. You want it to be ambiguous.
You have to be-
and
yeah.
they're being asked to have it not be ambiguous.
Well, court cases are based on the lack of ambiguity. You have to shuttle aside everything that's irrelevant and look at things in context of both the law and current practice, I suppose. So.
Wonderful. Well, what I'm told here is that our interview is ready, but we're gonna take a short break here, and then we'll show the interview with Paulo Kremides right after the break. So you've been watching Understanding the World.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drink, dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittiesusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Shalom. Welcome back to Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman. I'm joined in the studio by Mark Finkelstein, the Director of Jewish Community Relations for the Jewish Federation of Greater Des Moines. We've had a few technical problems. We're trying to show our video of my interview with Paulo Kremides from Brooklyn College at the AIPAC Policy Conference. I happened to run into him in a program on the progressive case for Israel. He considers himself a progressive, and he was wanting to share his experiences a little bit. And I mentioned that I was interested, and he said that he hadn't been able to share his story with anyone yet. So I said, well, I'd love to share your story on my show. So here is the first segment of my interview with Paulo Kremides. David Kaufman. I'm joined by Paulo Cremides, who is from Brooklyn College, and he's going to share his story about the BDS program and his experiences on the campus of Brooklyn College. Go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Paulo Cremides. I'm a political science and journalism major at Brooklyn College. I also write for the Brooklyn College Kingsman, the Brooklyn College Excelsior. I have a liberal political opinion column in both. And this whole story actually starts before BDS started. Actually, I'm also president of the vice president of the Political Science Club. And initially, the controversy that started with me is so the Political Science Department sponsored the event. You know that, correct? But we, as the Political Science Club, the academic club for the department, our president sponsored the event. She was very pro-Palestine. I'm pro-two-state solution. She sponsored the event, and after a vote by the rest of the executive board, the secretary and the treasurer, we decided to pull our sponsorship from her. At which point, SJP told us, unless you're going to send your president, we will not pull your sponsorship from our events. So at that point, the president found out, and the reason why she thought that I was going to try and pull a sponsorship is because I was trying to get the Jewish vote, because I'm running for student body president as well. But when we finally pulled the sponsorship, nothing very controversial happened. I wrote 2 op-eds condemning the BDS event, comparing Omar Barghouti to David Horowitz, because there's really no difference. All they do is fight for different teams. And what happened was, after those 2 op-eds, I said that I was going to go to the event. When I got there, I printed my ticket. They told me that I wasn't on a list, and these were people from my college, that I wasn't on a list to go into the event. Afterwards, I had to go inside, print out my ticket. I brought it out. They wouldn't let me in twice, and these were people from my college. It ended up that I had to talk to, I think it was a SJP coordinator for all of CUNY, who was the only one who let me in. And every time I walked in, I was being harassed by people from my college. They were telling me, well, how'd you get in here? You made such a big fuss about it. How'd you get in here? And I was like, I got in here. What are you going to do, kick me out? And once I got in, I sat down. The interesting thing is I was being watched by 3 people the whole time. And while I was being watched, they put this big guy next to me who actually, tried to look tough, act tough while I was taking notes, just sitting there taking notes. And so that was fine. I was like, okay, they're going to try and intimidate me. What hasn't happened before? But when I got up to ask questions, because there was a microphone to ask questions, I was the only journalist allowed to ask questions, I think. The other journalists were, sitting there taking notes. What happened was, one of them put their hand on my shoulder and, started trying to intimidate me, telling me if I don't ask any questions that they don't think are BDS related, they're going to take the microphone away from me. Also, at the same time, it was interesting because there were 3 Jewish students who were going to ask questions, but they were not allowed to, and it was shown as if they were not allowed to because they were Jewish, and it was as if SJP knew that they were going to ask questions that was going to say something that Omar Barghouti wasn't going to like. So that happened. Afterwards, what happened was it ended. We kind of all got back into the rhythm. 4 students did get kicked out for doing absolutely nothing on campus, absolutely doing nothing at the event. They did not do anything. I didn't hear any commotions. I was right across the hall. And what happened afterwards was, essentially a week afterwards, we had our first meeting of the Political Science Club. I could not make it, but it was interesting because apparently the president had gotten all her friends from SJP to attend the meeting, and she brought impeachment charges up against me and started a impeachment committee made up of members of SJP. So it was either go up against that, and they were going to prosecute me against student government, and it was going to mark my record, my college record, or I resigned. So I didn't want to have a mark on my record, so I resigned. And that's basically it. It's very sad because they're intimidating on people on campus. And not only that, it's weird because there's a fight going on, and I don't know if this is happening on other campuses, where they are actually trying to take over the campus media. They are actually actively trying to write more and more articles about Palestine, about all of these issues from their perspective. And it's just hard because we don't have a rallying call on our side to write back. The best weapon is a pen, but people don't realize that until they start reading these articles. And so this paper that I write for, these 2 papers that I write for, they're mostly read by the administration, college professors, and I think something like 20% of the student body. And so I think it's very sad that these people are trying to go around and bully people because they don't have the same point of view that they do. And I feel very intimidated. I didn't think that it would get so big that it would have to be me being kicked out of the political science club for not being pro-Palestine.
Holy cow.
So that's part one of the interview. I mean, and he has other things to say too. But I mean, this is our college campus. It's in New York, in a heavily Jewish school.
Yeah, it used to be anyway.
Well, it still is, from what I understand.
To the extent as it used to be, but it's at any rate. Here's a fellow who's a valid student activist on campus, a student participant in the journalistic life of the campus, who has a slightly different take than those who put the conference on. And that's very heavy-handed at the very least, and the intimidation certainly needs to be condemned by the administration of the college, I would think.
Well, yeah, I mean, from the other thing I think that's important to understand is Paulo is not a right-wing guy.
No,
I mean, he's not coming in there.
He's a progressive.
He's a progressive guy. As you'll see later in the interview, I get even more to that, asking him, what his background is, and you'll see in the clips as we go on. He really felt that free speech was being stifled here, that this was not a matter of just that he didn't agree with the BDS program, that he believed that people who should be able to speak out on campus were not being allowed to. And then not only did they not allow the free speech, but then they actually went after him and threatened him.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's innocuous enough, even if somebody disagrees with you, to give them a time to ask a question. And it's usually the case. Somebody will answer the question in an authentic way and ask the person to sit down. That's the bare minimum of free speech, David. In this case, the people were denied from even asking questions. And the bottom line is, what is the university willing to do about that?
Yeah, I mean, there are some clear problems in the club here. If that's what's passing as reasonable action by the political science club, and that this is coming with the sanction of the university, that he could actually be prosecuted.
Okay.
I mean,
clarify one more time. There are two entities involved. There's the Political Science Club, and there's Students for Justice in Palestine.
Students for Justice in Palestine, I guess, is the pro-Palestinian organization on campus, but evidently they're heavily involved with the Political Science Club. That seems to be what's going on.
Okay.
I would need a bit more clarification on that, but it sounds like the president of the Political Science Club is the one who wanted to endorse the BDS program.
Right.
Paulo wanted to oppose endorsement of the BDS program and got other people on the executive board of the Political Science Club to oppose endorsement and to pull their endorsement. Then the president went out and got friends of hers who were part of friends. I don't know if it's a him or her, to be honest. Got friends who were part of Students for Justice in Palestine. Because we all know that it's hard to get a number of students to participate in any of these things. So she was able to get a larger number of her friends or SJP friends to show up at this event.
Now, David, if you ask somebody what is the position of Students for Justice in Palestine, what's the possibility that they would simply say we are in favor of a two-state solution?
I have to look up SJP. But why don't we listen to the second part of the second part of the interview, and we'll move forward. There are actually 4 segments, and we'll listen to part 2 right now. So, Paolo, what makes SJP so influential on campus that they're able to do all of this?
I'm running for student body president right now, and there's been a lot of threatening against me that if I don't say that I will not, cut funding from SJP or anything like that, they're going to vote against my opponent who's Jewish, who did nothing during the event, who literally sat there and watched this whole thing happen and did nothing. And the other thing is they bring a lot of people on campus that are not from campus originally. So they bring people from Hunter College. I don't know if you're familiar with CUNY, but to get onto a campus, you don't need to be from that campus exactly. You can just get in with a college ID from the from the citywide college or something like that. So they bring people from Hunter College. They bring people from Queens College. And so they amass this force every time there's an event. That at the moment that we were all kicked out, the people who were kicked out, I wasn't kicked out, but the moment that my friends were kicked out, the person who was kicking them out wasn't from Brooklyn College. It was a person from Hunter College named Carlos Guzman. And that was the same person who harassed me as a journalist there. And it was weird because at the same time when they brought up the impeachment committee against me at the Political Science Club, it was actually a couple people from SJP that were on it. And so what they do is they don't have a large membership, but what they do is they put out people into other clubs and they infiltrate them. And they try to put them on the e-board to attack other people.
So when you're saying that they threatened to vote against your Jewish friend, is that what you were saying?
No, they threatened to vote against me.
They threatened to get in favor of this other person?
Yeah, because apparently, and this is what I've heard, is that I would cut funding from SJP, and I'm running for student body president right now. Vote for me. But the sad thing is that they're polarizing the campus to the point where they're backing people on student elections that are going to try and not do anything about it. And the reason why I think they're voting for him is in my platform, I've stated very clearly is that under Title VI of the U.S. Code, discrimination is not allowed on college campuses. I think you know that, right? So what I've seen is that they send a lot of messages to people from pro-Israeli communities on our campus. And what they're saying to them is they're harassing them. They're telling them, Israel Club might reach out to them saying, hey, let's do an event together about unity, about peace. And what they'll say is, we don't work with Zionist enterprises. We are practicing boycott, divestments, and sanctions on you, on the students. And that's really sad because what they're saying right there is that anyone who might have Israeli citizenship, anyone who might be part of a pro-Israel community like me, they're practicing boycott, divestments, and sanctions on them. So originally they are stigmatizing people, they are putting them on a perspective that they shouldn't be in, and it's wrong.
He's a powerful speaker. Mm-hmm. So Paolo points out, these programs are theoretically designed to promote boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israeli companies.
Right.
But the way they're being applied on campus is that they're being applied as boycotting students and student organizations on campus who are pro-Israel. And guess what, friends? That's a violation of what these universities stand for. It's a violation of the student codes of conduct, and any professors who support that, it doesn't matter whether they're tenured or not, should have their jobs in jeopardy. This is not legal on campuses. So what's being called for here are things that are illegal, threatening actions against Jewish students and Jewish organizations on campus. And anybody who tries to pretend this is a free speech issue is lying and obfuscating the truth. It's that simple. These are not free speech issues we're talking about anymore. We're now talking about bullying, intolerance, and hatred on campus. And it's coming from Students for Justice in Palestine and boycott, divestment, and sanctions advocates against Jewish students and Jewish institutions.
And apparently against students who are not Jewish who hold an opposing view.
Yeah, I mean, Paolo is not Jewish. We'll hear that in a moment because I asked him, why he was involved in this stuff. And it's really important to understand this. We're not talking about a free speech issue here anymore. This is not a free speech issue. This is a hatred and intolerance issue. Let's hear the third part of the interview, okay, Ryan?
I always thought that, like, before I came to my campus, I'd actually been asked by a lot of these peace community people, Christian peacemakers and things like that, to go to Israel, Palestine, to go to the settlements, to go to, West Bank and, see what's happening there. And I always thought that I was part of this peace community. I always thought that I was part of this peace community in this country. But it was only until I spoke out against BDS, and I don't even know if I'm a campus leader or not. It's just, I guess I'm very influential with a lot of students. That they started attacking me, that they started stigmatizing me, they started telling me that I'm not part of them.
And you said you're more of a pro-peace person and less of a pro-Israel person as your point of view.
Yeah, I'm not going to have people who agree with me here. It's funny because on campus, there are very, 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 very pro-Israel Jews, to the point, the right wing, completely, David Horowitz types who, they've called me an anti-Zionist. And it's really funny because people from the Students for Justice in Palestine have called me a Zionist as well. So there's this whole, dynamic discourse that is happening on our campus that I think is new. I think they're putting people in the middle where they don't know what to say or what to do. And it's really sad because one of my biggest mentors was a lady from a Christian peacemaking team, and I always fought for social justice with them. I actually marched with Occupy movements in upstate New York. I organized a lot of rallies against war. It's sad that I am being attacked because I am pro two-state solution, pro peace.
Being attacked for being pro two-state solution and pro peace.
A centrist position, in other words.
Well, let's talk about being a pro-peace activist, period. I mean, this is someone. I'm sitting here at the AIPAC policy conference, and I'm talking to Paolo, and I'm having this conversation with him, and I'm wondering how he got there, because this is a guy who I would say is more of a peace activist. The people from the Occupy movement were literally outside the door, a few hundred feet away, protesting the AIPAC policy conference. Now, there were lots of tweets about hatred being heard at the AIPAC policy conference. I didn't hear any hatred at the AIPAC policy conference, except for outside at the Occupy AIPAC protest, where I heard lots of hatred of Israel and Jews being spouted and allowed and using nasty signs. But inside, I heard, let's figure out how to have peace with the Palestinians. Let's figure out how not to have tens of thousands of people dying in Syria, and how not to have a war, not to have military strikes or a war with Iran. So what I'm hearing inside the conference is all about peace. What I'm hearing outside the conference is all about hatred. And then I have this conversation with Paolo, in which he basically says, look, I'm a peace activist. The peace people, the theoretical peace people, are hating me and attacking me for being pro two-state solution and opposed to boycott, divestment, and sanctions efforts that are designed to destroy the Jewish state. So we're sitting here in a situation in which I'm thinking the appropriate place for this person who is on the progressive left is the AIPAC policy conference.
Because there's room in it, certainly in the AIPAC policy conference, for the expression of that opinion, because we know for sure they program different sessions regarding similar questions. Absolutely.
And let's hear the last segment of the interview with Paolo here when I ask him what brought him to AIPAC.
Repeat his last name again.
Kremidis. Okay. Paolo Kremidis. Paolo, what brought you to the AIPAC policy conference?
On my campus, I have a lot of Jewish friends. I'm very active with Hillel and things like that, even though I'm not Jewish. And one of my friends actually saw me speak out about this whole BDS thing in one of our classes, in which the professor was talking about how the two-state solution is dead, how BDS is the only thing you talk about. And good enough that this kid was Joey Saban, who was one of the Saban Leadership Seminar people here. And he recruited me to come to this thing, to talk about not to talk about what I've been through, but to just see, the difference between what they're offering and what I guess we're offering, because I consider myself part of this community now. You were there when Ann Lewis was talking about how it's good to talk about these things, and how we have to fight it on the campuses.
Yes.
I think it's necessary. I wish there were more journalists like me that would actually talk about peace. I wish there were more journalists like me who would actually talk about things that are constructive. I wish there were more journalists that would condemn, this mantra that that SJP tries to have by putting itself as the left-wing group on campus about this issue. I wish we could do that. I think we have to sow the seeds, and I'm here to do that.
So that's Paolo Cremides, who's a junior at Brooklyn College. So, Mark, what do you make of all of this?
When you run up against opposition, some of the people in that opposition are ideological, and some are naturally people of goodwill who simply may have a different opinion. So in dealing with that, it's very important to try to tease out the ideological critics from the people who have a valid point of view and need to be able to express it and share and debate with others. But with the ideologues on either side, there is no debate. There can't be any debate. They won't debate. They will control.
And so someone who is an activist for a two-state solution, who considers himself a progressive, finds his home not in the peace camp, but at AIPAC.
But within a broader community like AIPAC, which truly seeks peace, seeks a reasonable peace, a peace that will hold for a very long time, not a quick fix either.
Yes, because AIPAC is a pro-peace organization. I mean, it's one of these things that I find myself getting so frustrated by when I talk to people who don't go to the AIPAC policy conference and they don't understand what's going on at the policy conference. And I see tweets from people like MJ Rosenberg talking about all the hate that's going on, and it's just blatant lies. I'm sitting there listening to speakers who are talking about their desire for peace, what they're trying to do for peace. The medical care that's being developed in Israel and that's being shared with the Palestinians, that the Israelis are trying to avoid military conflict at all costs, and all we're hearing is misrepresentations and lies coming out of these communities.
Part of that, essentially, of the misrepresentation are people taking as cynical that which Israel does to try to strive for peace.
In fact, the conversation that I had, one of the first conversations that I was part of with Paolo was at the Progressive Case for Israel argument, and one of the people brought up that on his campus, and there were a number of students there, brought up on his campus that the left wing makes the pinkwashing argument that Israel uses its civil rights record in relation to homosexuals as a way to cover up its relationship with the Palestinians. And what's interesting, of course, about this is that the reality of the matter is that the people on the progressive left don't want to hear that Israel does anything good for anybody that they do things for. The reality is anybody who is a LGBT activist at all needs to be a strong supporter of Israel, because nowhere in the world are LGBT rights more strongly defended than they are in Israel. Nowhere.
Absolutely. Not only more strongly defended, that gays are harassed and persecuted in many other parts of the region.
There, in the coming weeks, either next week or perhaps the week after, we'll talk about LGBT rights in Israel. In fact, one of the major advocates for Israel is the Speaker of the House of California, John Perez, who spoke as part of that Progressive Case for Israel argument at the AIPAC Policy Conference, and is himself a homosexual Latino supporter of Israel. Wonderful man, great speaker. And then Michael Oren spoke at the LGBT gathering at AIPAC, and yes, there was an LGBT gathering at AIPAC, and had a very wonderful speech that we will share in a future show. We'll take a quick break as we head into our final segment of the show.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drink, dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittiesusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Shalom. Welcome back to Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman. I'm joined in the studio by Mark Finkelstein, the director of the Jewish Community Relations Commission for the Des Moines Jewish Federation. I'd like to once again offer my thanks to Dr. Ronald Bergman, Bergman Folkers Cosmetic Surgery and Spa, for his support of this show. And I'd like to thank Ryan, my producer, for going the extra mile today as I brought in these videos for him to do at the last minute to convert into the proper format for this show. We're learning here as we get started and bringing in new technologies, and we're trying new things each week as the show grows and expands in what we do. So I'd like to thank Ryan for his extra efforts today. Mark, you had an issue that you wanted to point out for us.
Yes, we're taping this particular show on Thursday, March 7th. Yesterday, Wednesday, and it was apparent that the U.S. ambassador to the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, walked out of the agency meeting after the Iranian diplomat accused Israel of genocide. Along with the American ambassador walking out, I understand, so did the ambassadors of Canada. I believe Australia was among them as well. This is a typical bashing of the United States and of Israel by the Iranians, whose rhetoric is out of control.
Well, and let's talk about the fact that we're going to hear about how we're still in diplomatic talks and diplomatic talks are proceeding. How can diplomatic talks proceed if everybody walks out of the meetings and the Iranians are using rhetoric that's absurd? I mean, let's get to the point where there really is no diplomatic talk going on. There really is no diplomatic process going on. And we're dealing with posturing. And
what essentially it means that the sanctions that are being proposed to be tightened right now in bills and resolutions in Congress have to really hold, or else.
Well, it sounds like the time frame for military action is going to be, or other action would be June or July. And there was a report I saw just yesterday that the Israelis could in fact conduct strikes on their own But it would certainly not be as effective as what the United States could do in conjunction with them. Yeah, Mark?
The U.S. ambassador had accused Iran of, quote, commitment to deception, defiance, and delay in addressing the IAEA's concerns about possible nuclear weapons-related research.
And so in addition to the developments on the Iranian nuclear front, we also have a situation in which the rebels in Syria captured 21 Filipino peacekeepers and are demanding that the Syrian forces abandon the Israel border. They're also accusing the Syrian government of working with Israel. As a matter of fact, what a joke that is, of working with Israel. The reality here is that the Syrian-Israeli border is about to get a lot more difficult. When you just imagine a situation in which you have militants with lots of weapons sitting on the other side of the border, who can both launch attacks into Israel, potentially on the ground crossing the border, which is going to require a lot more enforcement, and also potentially by launching rockets and mortars over the border into Israel, which is much more difficult to defend against. So things are going to deteriorate on that border. As we're wrapping up the show here, I really wanted to thank Paulo Kremides for taking the extra time, for working hard for peace. To be honest, he's not working on campus to promote this right-wing Zionist point of view. He's working for peace on campus. And if the peace community can't understand that, I really ache for peace, because I don't think peace is possible if those who call themselves pro-peace spend their time preaching hatred. I just don't think that that's going to be a possibility.
What goes in the name of the peace camp is oftentimes, but not always, dedicated to more nefarious objectives than simply the attainment of peace.
That seems to be exactly what it is. And Paulo Kremides is calling it what it is. He's showing up at a conference that actually talks about peace, and it actually tries to promote peace, and it tries to promote security both for Israelis and Palestinians. I can't tell you how many times I heard those exact words at the AIPAC policy conference uttered by political leaders from the United States and from Israel and from Canada and from other places around the world. And anybody who says that those things and those words were not uttered at the conference is lying to you. Where we did hear all kinds of hatred about Israel and all kinds of things about promoting deception and lies was outside the conference at the Occupy AIPAC event, where I could hear as I walked by going to lunch one day all of those words being spread, misrepresenting pictures, misrepresentative signs, all kinds of things. It takes journalists like Paulo Kremides willing to speak out about the truth, willing to advance the cause of peace, and frankly, risking personal harm, not necessarily physical harm, but certainly emotional and spiritual harm, to be able to advance the cause. And I really thank him for taking the time to work with me. I thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next week.